Well, welcome back, everybody. My name is Anand Rao, Professor of Communication here at UMW, and it's my pleasure to welcome you back to COVID-19 in Context, our online course offered by the University of Mary Washington for the greater community. It's a stormy afternoon. We know that a number of areas around us are out without power. Please stay safe. Make sure that you're paying attention to any alerts about severe weather coming your way. We're going to keep our fingers crossed that the inclement weather doesn't impact any of our presenters today or take any of us offline. For now, we have a full slate and we're fully ready to go. Important to note at this stage that this is the end of our 8th week of this course, and this is our 16th session. Thank you to everybody who participated throughout this experience. We've had a wonderful time presenting it and look forward to continue working with you tonight, as well as the special session we have next Monday with a spokesperson from the Virginia Department of Health. Now, I think as was mentioned in the email at the beginning of the week, there will be a survey going out after tonight's session with some questions to find your thoughts about the course and see what exactly you liked about it, what suggestions you might have, and just to hear your feedback. So please look for that email immediately following this session. Keith Mellinger, our Dean for the College of Arts and Sciences, will be sending it out, and we really do appreciate your feedback. It's important for us to hear what you thought of this experience so we can build similar experiences in the future, hopefully. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce the speakers today in what has been what we knew was going to be a timely topic, but we had no idea just how timely this topic was going to be, as we see school boards across the state holding special meetings every night, it appears. The topic, of course, is the pandemic's impact on K-12 education. We have really a phenomenal panel tonight. We have Ms. Princess Moss, who's Secretary Treasurer of the National Education Association, Dr. Melanie Kay-Wyatt, Director of Human Resources at Spotsylvania County Schools, and our own Dr. Pete Kelly, Professor of Education and Dean of UMW's College of Education tonight. I think we're in for a real treat, and I'm looking forward to hearing their discussion about the impact on K-12. Please remember to post your questions for the speakers, because after the presentation, we will have a Q&A, and post that in the Q&A box. Check over the questions that are already there, upvote the ones you'd like to see at the top of the list, and we'll make sure we put those to the presenters at the beginning of the Q&A session. And if you have any other comments you'd like to share with myself or Dee Mellinger, please put those in the chat box, particularly if there are any technical concerns that you have. Well, without any further ado, let me turn it over to our presenters, and looking forward to hearing more about K-12 education during the COVID-19 pandemic.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Rao, and thank you, Dr. Mellinger. I'd also like to thank Dean Pete Kelly and Dr. Melanie Kay-Wyatt, who are going to present with me this afternoon. And a special shout out to our UMW Student Education Association President, Vanessa Fickus. SEA members are part of NEA's Aspiring Educators Group and a very special member of our family. I also want to thank all of you. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy lives and on this stormy Wednesday afternoon to join us for this conversation on the pandemic's impact on K-12 education. I am Princess Moss, a native Spotsylvanian and a 1983 graduate of the University of Mary Washington. Although we are virtual today, whenever I am among UMW folks, I am with family. So I thank you for inviting me to come home. I am also an elementary music teacher who taught 21 years in the Louisa County public school system. Currently on leave of absence from Louisa, I serve as Secretary Treasurer of the National Education Association. As Secretary Treasurer, I am proud to represent nearly 3 million public school educators across the country. NEA members work in every level of education, from pre-K to university graduate programs. We represent classroom teachers, education support staff, higher education faculty and staff, retired educators, future educators, administrators, and public service employees. A year ago, we added another membership category called Community Ally, because we know that the community is an important part of our education family. So when I say every level of education. I really do mean every single level of education. When I looked at the syllabus for this course, I was thrilled to see the many lenses through which this pandemic is being studied. That's so very important because there is no aspect of our lives that this pandemic has left untouched. Today's COVID-19 world has brought to our living rooms music performed by artists in their living rooms. We sit in our homes watching Trevor Noah broadcast The Daily Show from his home. Graduation ceremonies and celebrations have all become virtual. In ways too numerous to name, we are living in an entirely different world than we were just a few months ago. And you know what makes all of those things possible? Education. Education is what is allowing our nation to adapt and remain flexible. Education is what has allowed us to find new ways of doing all sorts of things together, even as we stay far apart. But the coronavirus didn't just move all of us into virtual spaces. It exacerbated the inequities that have been woven into the fabric of this nation from the beginning. And the students who were already marginalized have suffered the biggest blow. They represent historically marginalized communities that face heightened and unique challenges. These challenges have been sustained by systemic racism, classism, and inadequate funding of their schools. Racial divisions in our country are not by accident. They exist by design. At NEA, we believe that even though it has certainly been devastating, this pandemic has provided us with an opportunity to strengthen the fight for racial and social justice. We believe that the country has an opportunity to rise to this occasion and reimagine a society that benefits everyone, not just the fortunate few. This is the time for us to reevaluate our priorities as a nation. And rather than bailing out massive corporations who have profited from this pandemic, it is time for us to support a system that works for everyone. The federal government must return to its role of ensuring equal access to opportunity, protecting the most vulnerable, and investing in the future of society as a whole. The coronavirus forced America to see that every student's home doesn't have the technology and internet access they need to continue learning at home. I can't tell you the countless stories that I've heard about students not having the equipment they need for online learning. Those who were fortunate to have a tablet or other equipment had difficulty connecting to the internet. This scenario prevails in Black and Brown communities, in rural and poor communities. And we should all find it unacceptable that in 2020, teachers are telling stories of having to drive into town to get a Wi-Fi signal. I am one of those people who believe that internet access is a utility, just like water and electricity. The coronavirus forced America to see the already wide homework gap grow even wider. COVID-19 made it clear that not every student lives in an environment where it's conducive for them to do schoolwork at home. This is especially true for students and families who do not currently have a home. When home is not an option, schools and communities should work together to ensure there are safe spaces and safe places where students can do their schoolwork. America also became clearly aware of students who struggle with hunger. We know millions of students and their families are food insecure. Nearly 30 million students rely on school meals and other supports to help them get through the day. The pandemic made these students, their lives, even more precarious. And let me just say to you, growing up, I was one of those free and reduced price lunch children. I know personally how much those meals mean. The pandemic also turned a spotlight on the number of children who live with abuse and neglect, as well as the impact of disconnection from a support system. With schools closed, these students were trapped at home with their abusers and separated from the educators who are trained to recognize signs of abuse and obligated to report. For these students, educators are an essential support system. That's especially true for LGBTQ+ students whose families may mistreat them. The pandemic also revealed a lack of appropriate accommodations for the 7 million students across the nation with special needs. All students benefit from face-to-face interaction. This is especially true of our students with disabilities. Students respond to smiles, to words of encouragement, or gestures, facial expressions, and body language. Online learning supports and resources for children with disabilities has been challenging during this COVID-19 pandemic. Video platforms like Zoom don't help students who can't see or hear well or who have trouble focusing. Video platforms are very helpful, but we have to make sure that we are recognizing the circumstances that students are in. Many students need adult assistance to manipulate online functionality and fully participate in online learning. As plans for reopening school and campus buildings are developed and finalized, NEA is encouraging policymakers to ensure that those plans address the needs of students who need more help and who may have been impacted most by COVID-19. We are telling school districts that they must provide each of these students who have an individual education program with essential and equitable services so that being home during a pandemic doesn't push them further behind. I'll share just a few data points to help drive these inequities home. Nearly 1 in 5 of those in households with annual incomes of less than $50,000 a year say their children lack necessary software and equipment for online learning. 2 years before the coronavirus outbreak, the digital homework gap was affecting between 8.5 to 12 million K-12 students. Nearly half of all high school age LGBTQ+ youth who had disclosed their identity at home said that their families made them feel bad for their sexual orientation or gender identity. Only 1 out of 4 said that they could definitely be themselves at home. COVID-19 literally pushed back the curtain of the American dream. Behind that curtain, everyone saw the communities without adequate resources, the communities and the students who are often forgotten. But America also saw this. They saw educators put on their masks and their gloves and continue moving forward. Educators didn't miss a beat. Instead, they stood in the gap. They took care of their students because educators see those inequities in the faces of our students every day. With no preparation, educators jumped into a virtual learning environment. You know, I saw a post on Instagram a couple of weeks ago that reflected on what educators had to do. And it said, and I quote, "Please be prepared to teach online, in person, both simultaneously on a moving train while juggling in a burning building under the sea during a wrestling match with a T-Rex as a hologram and riding a unicorn. Oh, also be safe." I smiled when I read that, but it really isn't that far from describing what it takes to be an educator before and during coronavirus, if we are completely truthful. This year, schools became community food banks so that students would have enough to eat. Educators delivered to their students' homes the materials they needed to complete their classwork. One ESL teacher in Maryland figured out a way to get tablets to the homes of her students so that she would be able to continue teaching them English. Caravans of educators roll through neighborhoods to keep students encouraged. Special education teachers visited their students at home to give them much needed one-on-one support. Day after day, week after week, and month after month, America's public school educators did what they do every day. They did their best to help their students do their best. Educators did this work during an exceptionally difficult time. They did it while teaching their own children at home and while caring for their own families. Yet after all their hard work, we could lose nearly 2 million educator jobs because of how badly the pandemic has harmed our nation's economy. That's 1 out of every 5 educators. 275,000 of those jobs would come from higher ed. Virginia stands to lose more than 39,000 jobs, 6,000 of those from higher ed. We could lose these educators at a time when our students need them most. These projected losses come from current estimates that say we have already lost $202 billion in education funding. That is why the NEA and all of our pro-public education allies are pushing Congress to pass the HEROES Act. This critical piece of legislation, the HEROES Act, would restore $90 billion of that lost funding and save more than 800,000 jobs. Now, it's not just a matter of saving education jobs. It's also a matter of having the funding that will cover all of the things that will need to happen for schools to reopen and operate safely. To open safely, we need additional funding, and the HEROES Act will provide that funding. It costs money to ensure kids are properly distanced all day. Imagine figuring out that puzzle in an environment where classrooms already have a history of being overcrowded. It costs money to disinfect equipment in the very specific way that is needed to keep educators and students protected. Having enough masks and gloves in each school requires additional funding. And I've heard stories that in some districts, educators are being required to provide their own PPE. It costs money to have a nurse in each school so that health checks can happen throughout the day and everyone with coronavirus symptoms can be sent home. We must have proper funding to ensure that our students with disabilities have an intact school-based IEP team that can work with parents and guardians to make decisions to determine what other services these students might need as this nation continues to battle COVID-19. Excuse me. And let's add one more hurdle when it comes to reopening schools, and that's trauma. The COVID-19 pandemic has been traumatic enough for adults. We can all admit that. It's okay. But imagine what it's done to the minds and the hearts of our students, especially those students who may have already been living with a traumatic experience at home. I'm talking about the loss of a parent or the presence of a parent with a substance abuse problem, or living with domestic violence, or maybe the absence of a relative who was deported. As educators, we know what trauma can do to a student. It can make them struggle with all areas of language. They can have a hard time retrieving words, difficulty writing or remembering content area ideas. Kids who've experienced trauma can be hypervigilant. They can quickly become angry, or they can just as quickly shut down. All of these things were true before the pandemic. Before we address the academics, we must address the trauma of our students and of our educators. We cannot get into the academics before we take care of the trauma. Trauma is real. Our public school, they all need the additional funding from the HEROES Act so that schools have the counselors that their students need. The HEROES Act represents for education the same sort of emergency funding that went to businesses. It passed the House, but it has stalled in the Senate. You wouldn't be here today if you didn't care about education. So this is a part of this class where I give you some homework. As soon as the session is over, I invite you to visit NEA.org/COVID action. On that site, you can email your senators and tell them to agree to the funding. When schools and campuses reopen, they must open safely. They can't do that without adequate funding. And we must have the funding to keep adequate staff. It is all connected. In addition to pushing lawmakers to pass the HEROES Act, NEA has also offered guidance on what a safe reopening would look like. Our guidance is rooted in 4 basic principles. The first principle is health expertise. We believe that the health and safety of all is advised by science. It's fundamental. Our number 1 priority is the safety and well-being of students, educators, and their families. We are listening to scientists, not politicians. It is unacceptable for us and to us for even one school to open in a way that might be unsafe. We all stand in the way of any rush to open. This must be done right. Our second principle is educator voice. Educators are on the front line serving this nation's students, families, and communities every day. That means when it comes to safety and safely reopening our schools, educators' voices and expertise must be front and center as part of decision-making and implementation. Principle 3 is access to protection. Educators and students need consistently funded access to personal protective equipment, PPE, and the ability to disinfect surfaces regularly. And principle 4 is leading with equity. If this summer has shown America anything, it's that achieving racial and social justice is imperative. It is not an expendable aspiration. Last week, an Axios Ipsos poll revealed that parents feel that sending their students back to school in the fall is risky. And not surprisingly, Black Americans who have been hardest hit by the coronavirus were least in favor of sending their children back to school. They were followed closely by Hispanic Americans, a community that has also felt the brunt of the virus. So we know our guidance is on the right track. Parents want to keep their children protected at school. For educators, protecting voting rights is another way that we keep our students protected, especially during this moment in our nation's history. Educators, and especially NEA members, are already taking action. Our members register and vote in significantly higher percentages than the general population. It's why educators and NEA members also run for office in large numbers. It's why they volunteer for campaigns, work the polls, and contribute to candidates and to political action committees. We are preparing to win for our students at the ballot box this November. But I would be lying to you if I said we were not concerned about this year's process. We share the very same worries about voting that have been shared by people all across the nation. We wonder whether in-person voting will be safe, and we are concerned that the number of in-person polling places might be reduced. If there is a mail ballot election, we're worried whether ballots will actually arrive at the Board of Elections and be counted. We're concerned about absentee voting procedures, which can be onerous and confusing. As I look toward November, it is my hope that Black women, people of color, allies, and every co-conspirator will head to the voting booth in unprecedented numbers. They have reported to the front lines of the battle to end the over-policing of Black people, so I know that they can head to the polls too. We must honor the history of suffering and struggle that has made public education available to all and made voting rights possible. So yes, the pandemic has changed a lot. It has changed the way we teach and learn, and it has completely upended the way we live. But the needs of our students have not changed. The commitment and dedication of educators has not changed. And our commitment to holding our elected leaders accountable has not changed. Instead, because of COVID-19, the nation is now also clear about the tools that every student needs to build a life of success. It doesn't matter which zip code they live in or how much money their parents make. Race, ethnicity, religion, and gender identity, the language they speak at home, none of that matters. This nation has the same obligation and the same responsibility it had before COVID-19. And that obligation is to fulfill the promise of public education to prepare every child to succeed in a diverse and interdependent world. Thank you. I believe the panel is now ready to take questions.
Wow, Princess Moss, thank you very much for joining us for COVID-19 in Context. That is a very powerful message that we all needed and wanted to hear. Thank you so much for being here. We really, really appreciate it. And we're excited to get to the panel here because let me tell you, the questions have been flooding in while you've been speaking. This is such a timely topic. It's an important topic. And, you know, I want to get right to it here. The first question that we have, though, is about college students. And I thought before we get to the panel here, I thought we might bring in a special guest to talk to us just a little bit about college students dealing with the crisis right now. So do we have a guest here to join us?
I'm ready to go.
Please, Dr. Troy Pano,
Yep.
President of Mary Washington.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Dean Mellinger, and in particular, thank you and Professor Ralph for pulling this class off. Your idea and organizing all the work that went into it, really an amazing achievement. And I think it exemplifies the passion, the creativity, and the commitment, not only of you two, but of all the faculty and all the panelists who have participated in this over the last few weeks. So I just want to thank you. I think it's just really demonstrates the level of commitment and the quality of education that we offer at Mary Washington. I also thank you, Princess Moss. We're so proud of you as an alumna and everything you're doing across the country for students. It's amazing and inspiring, and I enjoyed listening to you so much. And I don't want to take too much time because I know Melanie and Pete are also here to take questions, but I did Keith and Anand offered me an opportunity and just to come and say a few words, seeing this as a panel about education. Higher education is education too, and a core part of our mission is preparing educators, teachers. That is our that is the start of this institution. Its founding was as a normal school to prepare teachers, and is such a critically important part of our mission today and what we do. And I know that many people aren't able to be in Fredericksburg, and I can see daily the progress that's being made on Seekebeck Hall, which will be the new home of the College of Education. And we're so excited about that being a centerpiece on campus to prepare future educators to do this critically important work. Well, I just want to say hello to everyone out there. I'm sorry I can't see all of you, but I've heard about the sort of distribution of individuals who are taking this class, and it's just amazing. Current students, alums, friends of the university, people from around the world who have entered in and engaged in this. Really amazing, and it's great to just be with you for a few minutes. This is really, I think this class is a demonstration of what we do here at Mary Washington. We try to create that space where we try to understand the world a bit better, and that we do that by asking a lot of questions. And we do that by searching for the truth, using the methodologies of all of the disciplines that we have to offer here. And I know that you have all enjoyed the opportunity to try and make sense of this world at a time when it's increasingly difficult to make sense of everything that is going on in our world. So I think that this is just a wonderful opportunity to come together and to create a sense of community, even though we might be scattered all about. I was asked to say a few words about the state of the university, and boy, I think, surreal, I think would be maybe one word to describe it, just like everywhere else. And I'm here on campus, and to be here now for several months where it's been a ghost campus of sorts, where there just hasn't been a lot of activity except the construction work that's been going on at Seekebeck and Virginia Hall. It's been a pretty lonely place, and I miss our students terribly. I miss our faculty and staff. And when I have an opportunity to run into someone out in the community from Mary Washington, it is great just to see them and have that human connection. The state of the university, I would say, is uncertain. The pandemic for us disrupts our business model in a fundamentally important way. We're about social gathering. We're about bringing people to campus together to live and learn together. And obviously this has disrupted that to its core. So for schools like Mary Washington in particular, we've had to adapt quickly. And I think that, first of all, I'm very proud of our faculty and staff who did so, as Princess Moss was mentioning earlier about the dedication and how our teachers across the country stood in the gap. Same thing could be said of our faculty and the people who serve our students on a daily basis, how quickly they responded. Unlike some institutions, when we sent students home, we were not on spring break. And so we had to do so while students were here, and our faculty did not have the same kind of time to adapt their classes to remote learning. So the fact that they were able to do so and do so successfully and get our students through the semester is really a testament to their commitment. Through this summer, I've been very proud of the institution working hard to develop plans to reopen the campus for the fall. We have had literally dozens of individuals spending night and day on Zoom meetings and working on plans to try and reopen campus. We have prepared a plan. We have submitted it at the state. We have received a blessing for that, but I have to be honest with you, it was a plan that was largely developed and written in May and June. And we know that the world has changed a lot since late June to now, July 22nd. We're seeing what's happening with the virus across the country. We're seeing what it's now doing in parts of Virginia, particularly in places like the Hampton Roads area, where we're starting to see a spike in cases. And even though we continue to make plans to create a safe environment to bring students back on campus, I'll be honest with you all, is that the trend lines are troubling for all of us. And we will not bring students back to campus unless we feel like we can do so in a safe way. So we will continue to work here on campus and our public health officials to monitor the situation. There have been a lot of predictions about the future of higher education in general, and particularly schools like Mary Washington. And it has taken a big hit to our budget, and it has created significant challenges for the upcoming year. Some people believe that this is going to be a tipping point for higher education, that we're going to reach a point of no return in terms of the way we conduct business. Those naysayers point to some important indicators that are troubling. We all know that over the last 20 to 30 years, we've seen a significant increase in the cost of education. We've seen a problem with the increase of student debt, now exceeding $1.6 trillion. The problem of creating access, as we see the changing demographics out there, is going to become an increasing problem for us. I too share those concerns about the cost of education. A lot of people ask, why does the cost of education outpace inflation the way it does? And that's a complicated question, and it's a complicated answer. Some of it comes through the increasing challenges of educating students, a more diverse student population that is bringing with them a significant amount of problems. Some of the problems that Princess Moss mentioned in her presentation, they not only have those when they're going through K-12, they're now bringing those significant problems with them when they come to college campuses. And we are committed to serving those students. And so whether it's mental health needs or students with disabilities or whatever the case may be, we've had to respond to some of those challenges. There are other reasons why there's an increased cost, but we also, just like K-12, have seen a decrease in our state and public support for what we do. So it's a combination of increased services, increased needs, but also a diminishing of public support for higher education. So the combination of those two have created a bad recipe, I think. And a lot of people are saying that what the pandemic has shown, that maybe campus life just isn't necessary for education. That if you strip away all of the things that we do on college campuses around living in residence halls and dining and athletics and other sorts of activities that we engage in that make campus life so meaningful and building those relationships, maybe those are what's driving the cost and we don't need those anymore. Is what we've demonstrated is that students can go and take their classes from home and it would reduce the cost significantly. And there's some truth to that. And I do think that the pandemic has disrupted us in a way that has caused us to adapt. And I do think that we have learned a lot from the pandemic in terms of how we can offer a high quality education. I think this class is a demonstration of that. And I think what our faculty are committed to in terms of preserving that high touch, high impact learning experience, even if it's done remotely, is something that we have learned from through this. But I am going to hold on to the fact that I think life in community matters. And I think that one of the things that our students and faculty and staff have realized through this time of social distancing and isolation is how important community is. And I wrote a piece back in April for an opinion piece that said, my hope is that at the end of this, we have a renewal of community and that we understand that what gives our life meaning and purpose is the investment that we make in other people's lives. And it's through those investments, it's through those relationships that really give our life purpose and meaning. And I think that's what a place like Mary Washington offers, is the opportunity to build those relationships, student to student, student to faculty, student to staff. And I know that our panelists could attest that they could think of the people who inspired them and motivated them, mentors that they had during their educational experience, and the opportunity to develop those relationships. And are we going to be able to do that if we are not living life in community, where we do not have those opportunities to really get to know each other, and also get to know each other from people who come from different backgrounds, different races, different ethnicities, different religious beliefs, different politics, that is what we are. We are a laboratory where we create that deep sense of community that I think our democracy needs so much. So even though I think this poses a significant threat to higher education, I am bullish on the future of Mary Washington and our mission. And I think that more than ever, the absence of what we offer in terms of that campus life is just revealed even more so, and that students are desperate to come back. And so I look forward to the day when we have students back on campus, and I hope it's just in a matter of a few weeks, but I can assure you that we're going to keep a close eye on the trends, and we are going to stay in close contact with public health officials, and we will continue to adapt to the environment in which we operate now. But mainly, I just wanted an opportunity here at the last class to thank all of you who have been involved in this class and who have participated in this and have created a sense of community around the world in studying what life is like and everything that we can learn from this experience amid this pandemic. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Payno, very, very much. I think every class I teach from now on, Princess Moss and Troy Payno are going to come do the last class because I'm not sure we can top this. This has really been terrific. Thank you very, very much for being here. And please, you're welcome to stay with us. I want to jump right to the Q&A because we have a panel here and a lot of good questions, and I want to get to those. Again, I'm Keith Mellinger, the Dean for the College of Arts and Sciences, and I'm happy to welcome Dr. Pete Kelly, the Dean for our College of Education here at Mary Washington, and Dr. Melanie Kay-Wyatt, who works for Spotsylvania County Schools. And I'd like to turn the first question to Dr. Wyatt, if I could. The first question is about students coming back. And, you know, I think it's controversial, but do you believe that going back into in-person classes is a good decision, or should we be waiting until the spring? What are your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts waver each day. We are what I call in a system of education GPS. We're constantly recalibrating, relaunching, and doing everything as numbers change, and we're all watching the news. So I suggest people to listen to science and listen to the experts who give us that information to guide us on what opening is going to look like. So if you're asking me that specific question on a certain day, if our numbers are looking like we're down and we feel like we can open, and the hybrid model that we rolled out for Spotsylvania County Public Schools, I think they should reopen with those safeguards in place. Of course, we are educators. We're going to always put safety first. You know, most of us believe in the whole child tenets of keeping them challenged, healthy, engaged, safe, and supported. So any of our decisions are going to wrap around those tenets, with safety being first. So that question is going to look very different as times change for us. So of course, safety first for kids. Right now, as you know, Spotsylvania County, we are going to distance learning for the first 9 weeks. We will be looking to support what everyone's calling the more marginalized populations. By the way, that word marginalized does make me shiver a little bit. I like to think of maybe at promise, or, you know, or maybe at potential a little bit more different, to put a positive spin, because those children deserve that support that they need. So it will look different on different days, but we will ensure the safety of not only our students, but our staff as well.
Thank you for that, Dr. Kay-Wyatt. I think certainly, as Dr. Mellinger mentioned, it's a controversial question, but there are a lot of other elements that we have to consider, and I think the next question really points to this, and I want to present this to Ms. Princess Moss. Thank you for that really moving presentation. It was really wonderful to hear your thoughts on this. Now, I know that this session is billed as K-12, but of course, as educators, you also are aware of developmental concerns, particularly for younger students, and the question is about the impact on younger students. In particular, they're framing it as preschools, daycare impacted, really early childhood education, and the concern about how social skills might be impacted with students having to wear masks and socially distant. What are some of the concerns about having them in a situation where we're asking very young children to engage in some of these practices? It might be difficult for them to do so. And I think tied to that is also, if we do decide to not have students go back, and particularly for young students, should we be concerned about the developmental impacts for those students if they're not returning back to a classroom?
That's a that's a really good question, and we're very concerned about the development of students. I mean, this COVID-19 has had a dreadful impact on all facets, as I had mentioned earlier, on all facets of our lives, and so. Yes, we are concerned about the socialization of students, but as has been said before, you know, we are concerned about the safety of students. I know that I have educators very concerned about the ability of our younger students, the pre-K and, you know, kindergarten and first grade, understanding the importance of wearing masks and not taking those masks off, and the importance of social distancing. And so as we enter this, these uncharted waters, I think that what we have to do is we have to have those very important conversations with the educators who work with those students every day. And we have to get their expertise on how best to address those very complicated issues dealing with the socialization of our younger students. But what you've stated is it's very real, and it's very challenging. But the educators who work with these students every day know best how to help those students be successful and remain safe in such an environment. So that's how I would answer that question.
Well, thank you very much for that. You know, last night I spent quite a bit of time on Facebook Live listening to the Fredericksburg City School Board discussing their plans for the fall. And one of the issues that came up a little bit is synchronous and asynchronous remote learning. And I'd like to turn to Dean Kelly, maybe for this next question, to get your input on this. You know, the question is about the merits of synchronous versus asynchronous distance learning. And, you know, there's access issues that come up with that. And I wanted to get your thoughts on that. You know, what do you feel as the strengths, and how do we provide access to all students if we have to go virtual K-12 in the fall?
It's a really good question, Keith, and I thanks for asking it. I have to say up front that I'm not an expert on online instruction, and so I can offer up what I can, but I expect Melanie is going to be able to offer up some ideas as well, because this is a very real life issue that they're struggling with, and it does have to do with equity, and it's about trying to make sure that students and families have access to the equipment they need in order to engage in online instruction, and that they have access to internet. And I really loved Princess Moss's idea that we should consider internet access like any other utility. And I think this is just one more of those inequities across systems that has been laid bare by the COVID pandemic that we're in the middle of. And if something positive comes out of it, I hope we're going to be able to rethink how we fund schools and how we create access to all of these systems. So Melanie, I'll turn it over to you.
Sure. So I have the same discussion here at Spotsylvania County Public Schools, as well as in some other venues that I sit in. When you're talking about the asynchronous and synchronous learning, there's going to have to be some sort of hybrid depending on your students' needs, because it's also that distance learning is wrapped around parent and home schedules. And I say that because there are parents who still need to go to work, and they may not be able to support their child at the time that maybe a teacher is live. So you're going to have some sort of hybrid to support all of your families. Now, the next step in that question is about technology and the gap in that. We've talked about the digital divide for so many years, and I think this has really brought it to light and is creating an opportunity for schools. It's something that educators already knew, but more for a public lens, that we need to do something. And that digital divide is not just about the connectivity, it's also about devices and putting the proper devices in the hands of children. It does bother me when they say, oh, every child has a cell phone. You cannot access, educational programming through a cell phone. It needs to be the appropriate device so a child can learn properly and access, whether it's a program that we're offering or some sort of recorded video. So asynchronous, synchronous, that's kind of, to me, a separate conversation than technology gap and connectivity with one-on-one devices. But I think it's just really where educators get creative and do what they need to do is what we've always done, and that's put the needs of our kids first.
That's excellent. Thank you for that, Dr. Kay-Wyatt. I appreciate it. There are a lot of really good questions here thinking about some of the contingencies and some of the impacts of COVID and the pandemic and some of the unintended consequences, including one of what it means for staffing and certainly concerns for teachers and staff at schools. And one other population, and that is the substitute teachers. One of the questioners says that in their county, they had a lot of substitute teacher shortages before the pandemic. And let me turn this to Ms. Moss, if this is something perhaps at the national level there's a concern about this, or if there's some consideration, particularly for staffing with a very different environment. Should we be concerned about shortages for substitute teachers? And in particular, if we're looking at shortages of teachers, what do we do about then not having enough staff to be able to cover?
Right. So thank you. Thank you for the question. First of all, excuse me, we need to make sure that that we're providing a safe environment for all, whether it be our students, whether it be the parent who brings that students to school, our educators, and when I say educators, I mean all of our educators. So it's important that we're ensuring that we're providing that safe environment, and we need the resources, as I had mentioned earlier, to ensure that we are one, providing the safety measures that need to take place, and two, making sure that we are inviting the best into the education space. And that we are providing an environment in which those folks coming into that space feel, I'll backtrack and say that, for many of us who are in education, if you ask us our story, it's a calling. We want to help children. We want to help children to be their best. So what I would say is that we have to ensure that we are providing, that we are solid in making sure that we are inviting and making folks feel secure that when they walk into that space, that they are safe and secure, and I think that will help draw people into the profession, the right folks into the education space to best help our students.
Yeah, thank you for that. Shifting gears a little bit, the next question has to do with the next academic year. And this is not the first time I'm hearing this, but I've heard parents say to me, boy, I wish I could just take the whole year off and just keep my son or daughter home. I'd like to turn to Dr. Kay-Wyatt first for a response to that. I mean, can a parent do this? Tell their 11th grader to take a gap year?
Not that simple. Not that simple at all, especially if you're looking to return to meet graduation requirements. I must say that first. But when parents are thinking about a gap year, I strongly encourage them to speak with their local school administration or school counselor, or even reach out to us here, because by doing that, does, you put some loss in there for that student, some credits, as well as some social emotional things that could happen. So I can't speak to each individual student's needs. There could be medical needs, there could be many other things, but please reach out to your local school, because there are ways that we could support and help you with decisions through distance learning that might really meet your needs. So I'm hesitant to say a gap year. I know we always think it's great when we're talking about college students, but very young students have some very critical skills that K-12 can offer them, not only with curriculum, but socio-emotional learning as well. So reach out to your local school administration, school counselors, and we'll be happy to support you through that thinking. It's a tough decision for parents. My hats are off to parents and every educator out there now. And I hope you don't mind. I wanted to say something about the shortage of substitutes. we are always, I hope that's okay. I know it wasn't directed towards me, but I feel like, while we're operating in a pandemic, we know that there's a teacher shortage. There's also been that substitute shortage, but what educators do is really kind of pick up that heavy lift, and we get very creative to make sure that we're going to support your students. So I don't want parents out there worrying that there are going to be empty, vacant positions where their child's needs are not going to be met. Our school division, like all school divisions and all educators, will work to make sure that that happens, that everything is covered, and our teachers are trained through professional learning to walk into this new environment that we're in of school, and our children can be safe and still be educated at the same time, whether it's a hybrid or distance learning.
Thank you, Dr. Kay-Wyatt. I appreciate that as a parent. I certainly appreciate that dedication and commitment. And to the question about a gap year, I have two younger kids that are going into middle school and high school, and we've kind of half jokingly asked that question ourselves. It's the time for them to take a little bit of a gap year. I also have two older kids who are both in college. And so I want to take this question, and if Dr. Pano doesn't mind, I'd like to turn it toward him to ask about what should we offer in terms of advice to students in college thinking about taking a gap year in the coming fall?
Yeah, well, thanks for the opportunity. Gap year, I think this is a conversation that's occurring in homes across the country right now, right? Whether or not people should take a gap year. These are two things I would caution, because there's been a lot of said about gap year even prior to the pandemic. And some people, particularly from privileged backgrounds, see a gap year as something to do between high school and college, where they can go out and have some experience, maybe serve in their community or travel or what have you. And I suppose that's all well and good for those who could afford it. But I think taking a gap year under these circumstances is problematic for a couple reasons. One is that there's probably not much you're going to do in the pandemic except be at home. And unfortunately, there aren't a lot of opportunities to really go out and do something that might benefit you personally or professionally. The other is that the students, particularly those students who are greatest at risk, first in family or first generation, stopping out, the research is pretty clear that when you lose the momentum towards getting to the finish line, getting that degree, it becomes harder and harder for you to enter back into the process. And so my concern for students who are taking that gap year is that they lose that momentum. And I think it's incumbent upon institutions like Mary Washington to offer really a variety of options for students. Both, you'll see that there will be classes face-to-face, hybrid, but also distance learning where students can take classes online. And so I would really encourage students, if at all possible, to continue your education in some way, even if it means not taking a full load, but continuing to make that progress towards a degree.
All right, well, thank you very much for that. And we are about out of time. So thank you all for being here, Ms. Princess Moss, Dr. Melanie Kay-Wyatt, Dr. Pete Kelly, and Dr. Troy Pano. It's been a terrific session and a timely one, and a very important part of this class. And as Dr. Rao said at the beginning, we didn't know how timely it would be when we scheduled it 3 months ago, but this was perfect. So thank you so much for being here. And thank all of you, everybody out there who's been paying attention to this course. We thank you so much. This has been an amazing experience for us. We've never done anything like this. I've never had a class enroll 1,900 students before, but it was certainly presented a lot of challenges. There are a couple people that I want to specifically thank. One, of course, is Dr. Rao, because early on, I thought I could do this myself, and it quickly became apparent that that was just not going to happen. I needed some help, and he stepped forward and really helped out quite a bit. So thank you very much, Anand Rao, for all of your assistance in delivering this course. The other person who helped quite a bit is my assistant dean, Dr. Betsy Lewis, professor of Spanish here, and she's just done a tremendous job. She's helped run the small group discussions. She helped us a lot with the website and updating things in Canvas, a lot of things behind the scenes that, that most of us aren't seeing, but she's been incredibly helpful. So thank you very much to Dr. Lewis for that help as well. Students, remember that you do have a final paper to submit. It's not due until Sunday, so you have a little time. The final quiz is open to you tonight then as well, and that'll wrap up the course. Finally, I should thank all the other folks on campus who have helped. Mike Breitenbach, who helped with our website, the folks in the finance office who helped us with some issues. It really took a village to pull all this together. But you know, a big part of that was the 40+ faculty who all donated their time to give these lectures over the course of the 8 weeks. Nobody's being compensated for this. This was something that we did because we felt that this was part of our public mission. And it certainly has generated a lot of goodwill. I know there's a lot of you who've tuned in every class period, and I'm hearing from you, and I appreciate that. I run into people when I'm running with my dog in the morning. I see people when I'm walking downtown, and they stop me and ask me about my instruments hanging on the wall, and it's been fun. So I appreciate that very much. Dr. Rao.
Sure. Thank you, Keith. You know, as Keith mentioned, it really does take a village, and to the 40-some presenters, the over 100 faculty and staff and administrators who pitched in to help lead discussions with our incoming students and some of our returning students, a huge thank you to all of you for volunteering your time and really pitching in at an important point in the summer and assisting with this endeavor. I also want to give a shout out to Betsy Lewis for her assistance. Wouldn't have been possible to run these discussion sessions without her, and also to a recent UMW graduate, Christina Montemorano, who has helped us with providing the captioning for the videos. So she very quickly works after the video is done, the session is done, to turn that around with complete captions so that we have that on our website. And as somebody asked in the chat, we have all of those videos on the website. So please feel free to go back and rewatch or catch some that maybe you missed before and share them with your friends. I think there's some great resources, and I think some that I'll be referring to my students in the fall that they should be checking out because they're really a great resource. Last, I want to thank Keith for this opportunity, and I think that he deserves so much credit for taking this idea. As a colleague had mentioned, somebody else was pitching at another school, and he ran with it. In a matter of just a few weeks, was able to turn this into a course and really exceeded not only our expectations, what other schools have done, but really pulled this off and made it work. So hats off to you, Keith. I think it was a really great endeavor, and I truly enjoyed working with you on this. So thanks, everybody. Don't forget, we also have a special session on Monday with the spokesperson from the Virginia Department of Health. And as Dr. Pano and others have mentioned, boy, there are lots of developments with COVID-19 right now, and in particular in our state, seeing some of the trend lines. I look forward to hearing from the VDH about what their expectations are, how we can respond to it, and what some of their thoughts will be in the months and weeks going forward. So please don't miss that. Dr. Melanie will be sending out a link to that. Thanks to everybody. Students, we look forward to reading your papers. And to everybody else, please stay safe out there. And thanks for joining us. Have a good night.
Thank you so much.